Welcome to another edition of Iconic Sonics. I'm Mike Gastineau. Our thanks, as always, to the Swinomish Casino and Lodge and Dick's Drive-In Restaurants. And we welcome in a guy, he'd be the first to tell you, he can't be an iconic Sonic because he never played for the Sonics, but he did play for 5 different NBA teams over 8 years. And he's a Seattle icon because he's one of the great players in University of Washington history. And he now works in the broadcasting business. So every time you turn on the TV, you hear his voice filling up your living room, whether you want it or not. Eldridge Recasner. Eldridge, thanks for doing this. How are you?
Yes, thanks for having me, man. I'm good.
The iconic Husky aspect of it, it's true. You're still, and you probably will stay this way because people don't stay in college long enough anymore. You're the 9th leading scorer in history in the basketball program there. That's a basketball program that's such a pretty good player. So that number, I think you hit 1,700 right on the nose. That number's held up pretty well. I'm going to assume of all the things you've done, you'd list that as one of your proudest accomplishments.
Oh, for sure. I remember going into the Hall of Fame in 2010, and one of my favorite players in UW's history, Chris Velp, rest in peace, presented me. So it was a very cool honor. Back in the days where you didn't really think about where you were on the scoring list, you kind of just played. But when I finished at UW, I was number 3 all time, behind behind Chris Velp, who was number 1. Can't remember who number 2 was, but I was 3rd when I finished in 1990.
Yeah, and that's neat. I mean, guys talk about what those kind of things mean. I'm sure that it's a tremendous sense of pride. Again, when you figure who all's been there, and you're on some other statistical lists as well. I think assists, you're still on that. So it's you were scoring and dishing, man. You were doing it all.
Yeah, I think the older you get, the more precious it is. When you're young, you don't really think about it. But when you get older, you really appreciate stuff like that. And I really enjoyed my time at UW. 1986, my freshman year was the first year of the three-point line. I wish I could go back and get 10 to 15 three-point attempts a game. I would probably be number 1 on the scoring list, but things were different back then.
Shooters are funny. We had Hersey Hawkins on, and he dropped 63 one night for Bradley. It says, "Oh, I didn't shoot enough." He goes, "Now I look back on, you didn't shoot enough. You scored 63 points." But when the shooters are feeling it, you can't shoot enough.
Yeah, I watched the podcast last night with Hawk, who was my teammate in Charlotte, who I played against in '96 when I was with the Rockets, and he was on the Sonics. Just a great player, and it's hard to imagine. He said he stopped shooting when he had 62 points. He tried to get his teammates involved, but you know what? I'm not surprised. That's just the type of guy that Hawk is, man. He's all about the team and all about winning and doing things the right way.
I was trying to think of how you're from New Orleans and how you got from New Orleans to Seattle, and I'm assuming it's Andy Russo because he had coached down in Louisiana, right? I'm assuming maybe you had a relationship with him and then followed him out west.
Exactly. The iconic Sonics, probably one of their biggest rivals, the Utah Jazz. Karl Malone was at Louisiana Tech when Andy Russo was down there. And I believe they made a Sweet 16 or Final 8 run in the NCAA tournament in '85. And Malone obviously went pro. And then Russo took the job here at Washington when Marv Harshman retired. So, yeah, that's how I got to Seattle. I knew nothing about the Huskies except I saw one special that I think it was titled The German Connection on Detlef Shrimp and Chris Velp. And that was about all I knew. So when he asked me if I wanted to come, I told him no. I don't know anything about the University of Washington Pac-10. And my dad was like, "Yeah, you're going. That's UCLA, that's USC. It's a great conference. You're going." And I said, "I am." He said, "Yeah." And next thing you know, I end up in Seattle.
I am? Yeah.
I had no say so in the deal.
Outstanding. Well, one of the things that's really interesting about your college career that really weaves into what we're about here is you played Gary Payton often in college, and you guys were squaring off against each other usually, right? I mean, you were checking each other. Was he? I mean, his personality obviously developed, but we all remember the Sports Illustrated cover where he's dribbling the basketball and yelling at the photographer. So I mean, he obviously was talking at that point. Like as a freshman, as a sophomore, was he already verbal on the court? Was he yelling all the time at everybody?
Oh, yeah. I think Gary's probably the only kid that came out of the womb talking smack. Yeah, the picture you saw in Sports Illustrated, that was our senior year when he was Sports Illustrated Player of the Year. But I remember the first time playing against Gary, we had Chris Velp at the University of Washington, who was the 1985-86 Pac-10 Player of the Year. The following year, Jose Ortiz, I don't know if you remember Jose Ortiz, but Jose Ortiz was at Oregon State. So he was a stud player for Oregon State. I was a freshman for UW starting at point guard, and Gary was a freshman for Oregon State talking at point guard. And he had that scowl on his face from the first time I ever met him, man. And to be honest, I hated him. We didn't like each other at all in college. For all 4 years, we just went head to head.
Yeah.
I think we won at least half the games, and I know I played well because I was always up for that game.
And then did that relationship, you get into the NBA a few years after him, and we'll get to that part of your story in a few minutes. Did the relationship soften a little as you got to know each other?
No, it got worse because by the time we got to the NBA, he was the man. so it got worse. It didn't soften up until a couple of years ago at a John Howie event. John Howie Kick Hunger Challenge. Me and Gary both participated in that. And we were talking. He was like, yeah, man, you would never back down. I said, well, wow, you would never say nothing. He was like, yeah, I couldn't give you an edge, but you used to come with it. They all got a lot of respect for your game. So that was the first time I had ever heard anything positive from Gary.
Yeah, and it's fine. I call him now Grandpa Gary because he's the nicest guy in the world. He wants to tell you, but that was, I mean, again, different players use different things. Michael Jordan created things that weren't necessarily true. This guy disrespected me, and he'd create this, and it would turn him into something different than what he was. Gary used his mouth in a positive way. I think. I don't think he achieves, or let me ask you, do you think he achieves what he achieved if he hadn't been that way?
No, I mean, he's that little, pretty much unknown Oregon State. I mean, obviously Oregon State had AC Green, but it's not like Oregon State is UCLA or Arizona or the way Gonzaga is now. I mean, it's a little small school. I call games at Oregon State every year. And every year I text Gary and I was like, man, how in the hell did you last here for 4 years? As crazy as you are coming from Oakland. So yeah. I don't think he would have been the same player either. But Gary talked smack, but he backed it up. Because I remember when we came into the Pac-12 conference as guards, the guard in the league at that time was Pooh Richardson. Gas, I'm pretty sure you remember Pooh Richardson.
Sure.
Pooh was from Philly. Pooh was a McDonald's All-American and all of that stuff. And he was getting all the hype. And I remember our freshman year, Gary Payton just shutting him down. I was like, damn, this Gary Payton dude is real. So Gary kind of put himself on the map and he let you know about it. I think in the NBA in my era, Gary Payton and Mookie Blaylock were probably the two best defensive guards. Mookie never said a word, and every time Gary did something, he was going to let you know about it. But I got a lot of respect for him, man. Coming from little bitty Oregon State, winning college basketball player of the year to being defensive player of the year and in the Hall of Fame now, I got nothing but love, GP. He was the real deal.
Yeah, and the defense was legit. I mean, it wasn't something he talked about.
Oh, no. He had guys peeing down their leg, guys. I mean, guys literally scared of him in the Pac-10. And not only in the Pac-10, hell, in the NBA. One of the reasons I started 30 games for the Houston Rockets was because the guards were scared of Gary. And Rudy came to me, he's like, well, we don't have nobody that can guard Gary. You think you can guard him? I was like, hell yeah, I can guard him. I've been playing against him my whole life. But he had guys literally scared out there on the court. I call GP, he's a gangster, guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's an Oakland gangster, man. I don't think it was false. I think it was real. I think that's the way he grew up. He probably grew up in a rough neighborhood. He played with a chip on his shoulder, and it paid off for him.
Well, there are guys. I mean, I think basketball, it's like a lot of other sports in that, the offensive side is what the fans pay attention to, and even the players. That's you want to go out. You want to score a lot of points. You want to have fun. We started this by talking about your point scoring at UW. But there are guys that come along. Everybody who plays, you've got to play some defense. Some guys, maybe don't do it as well as others. But Gary, from the start, I mean, defense was as, if not more important than offense to him.
Oh, it was his game. I think he built his game around defense, and he wanted to play it. Most guys don't want to play defense. Hell, I didn't want to play no defense, guys, unless a guy was talking smack to me or something, I would accept the challenge that way. But everybody wants to focus on offense and use their energy for offense. And let's be honest, Gary wasn't a highly skilled, great offensive player in his college days at Oregon State. He didn't have a great jump shot. He wasn't a leaper that was going to jump over you and dunk. But defensively and getting steals and getting in the transition, getting layups, I think over time, by the time he got to the Sonics in his third or fourth year, he had willed himself into a good offensive play. He had a knuckleball three-point jump shot. But he had so much confidence, it would go in.
So the other half of those great 90 teams, and there was more than just these two, but we always talk about Shawn Kemp as well. I'm curious, did you cross paths with Shawn? Because he gets to Seattle. You're still in college at UW. I know sometimes there's some cross-pollination there, and he was a young guy when he got to the NBA. Did you see him play, or did you get to know him at all when the year you were at UW and he was in Seattle?
Oh, I met Shawn before he came to Seattle. We played on the USA basketball team that represented the United States in Taipei, Taiwan. It was called the R.W. Jones Cup. And I remember coming back telling everybody how great Shawn Kemp was. Nobody knew who he was. I forget who the Sonics had a chance to draft back then. I don't know if it was Scottie Pippen or somebody, but they had a chance to draft somebody else, and they took Shawn Kemp, and everybody was upset. And I said, oh, no. We went to Taipei, Taiwan, Gas, and I'm telling you, Shawn just won over everybody. He was a grown goddamn man coming out of high school. The way you guys saw him when he was with the Sonics, he was built the same way in high school. I mean, he was phenomenal. I used to cut his hair. I cut everybody's hair on the trip.
Really?
We made over there. So I was the unofficial barber, but I met Shawn, I think it was 1988. We went over to Taipei, Taiwan with Team USA before he was drafted by the Sonics. And I just remember being impressed. The most athletic power forward in the history of the NBA, without a doubt. I mean, Shawn was explosive. He played with swag. He had all those antics, and I say he still does, because whenever I see him, he's still walking around like it's 1996. You know, he's a little heavier. But yeah, when I first met Shawn in '88, man, I was just impressed. He was an amazing athlete, and I wasn't surprised at all he went on to do the things he did with the Sonics.
You know, and there's about a 5 or 6 year stretch where what Shawn did was he delivered the goods every night. If you paid your ticket for an NBA game and you went and watched, I used to tell people, just keep your eye on him. He'll do something tonight that you've never seen before. And that was almost 100% true. I mean, he had nights where maybe he wasn't quite as spectacular, but usually you'd get at least one play where you'd go, where did that come from?
Yeah, I think guys in the NBA were fans of Shawn Kemp. You know,
yeah,
because he came into the league, He came into the league as just a great athlete. But I thought over time, he got his jump shot down, he got his post moves down, and he was a problem, man. When I was with the Rockets in '95, '96, the year after they won back-to-back championships, we got swept by the Sonics in the playoffs, and we just didn't have an answer for Shawn. I mean, he was the real deal, man. And you know, I hated to see him leave and go to Cleveland. But I think the fans are going to always remember him as a Sonic because he was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it shows you the love Seattle had for him, because he was pretty definitive when he left, and he probably said some stuff that he wishes he could take back. And a lot of times a city will then turn on an athlete. I mean, look at Alex Rodriguez in Seattle. You know, he's never been welcomed back here. But Shawn was different. People loved him so much. It's like, okay, whatever, man. You know, and he's come back and is here now all the time. It's a genuine feeling, I think, among the fans.
Well, I think it was real. I think the fans realized what happened. You know, Jim McIlvaine's a friend of mine. They decided to give Jim $35 million, I think, and they wouldn't play Shawn. And I was scratching my head as well, because Gary had just got paid. And I think Shawn, it was Gary's team, but Shawn was right there. There's no Gary Payton without Shawn Kemp. And when Gary got paid, I thought for sure Shawn would get paid. And when they didn't, but they gave some money to Jim McIlvaine, I think everybody was like, oh, wow, what the hell are they doing? So I think that's the reason why he was forgiven and he's so loved and accepted in the city, because he brought it every night. I mean, there's no Kevin Calabro without Shawn Kemp. Let's just be honest. There's no magic carpet ride and all that kind of stuff if there's not Shawn Kemp.
Yeah, and you know, and I think Shawn, I think as you go back, I mean, it was Shawn had a contract that, because of the way the rules were at the time, they couldn't redo it I think they wanted to. I think it was just a really perfect bad situation. You had a guy who you wanted a big guy in McIlvaine, you paid him. Shawn now wants more money. You're kind of hand tied with what you can do. Maybe if he had been patient, but you know what? I mean, that's you guys who are in the league. Patience only lasts so long, right? Because you know you're only going to be there a certain amount of time. It
was the worst move in Sonic's history. Let's just be honest about it. It was the worst decision that they ever made, because it broke up that fantastic team. You know, George Karl was like, he was like an arrogant Gary Payton as a coach. You know, I hated George when we played against him, man, because he was arrogant and cocky. Gary was arrogant and cocky. Shawn out there talking smack. I mean, they just had an awesome squad, man. But that was the downfall of the Sonics as we knew it.
So Gary comes out of Oregon State and he's heralded and ends up in the NBA right away. And Shawn, you know, almost jumped straight from high school and ends up in the NBA. You're competing with these guys in the college game, and you don't end up in the NBA. And you spend 5 years. You were in the Philippines, Germany, a couple of American cities, Yakima, Louisville. I'm still Turkey. I think you were in Turkey. All of this time playing kind of in the basketball shadows before you get your NBA break. How frustrating was that to you? And did you consider giving up and saying, look, I'm smart, I can do other things, or did you want to keep playing?
Oh, it was very frustrating, Gas, you know, because I thought I was the second best player in the Pac-10 our senior year behind Gary. I think Gary got drafted. I believe Judd Bushler got drafted, and I think Trevor Wilson got drafted. But I thought I had a better Pac-12 career than Trevor Wilson and Judd Bushler. I'll give Gary the credit. I think we were neck and neck headed into our senior year, you know, as being the front runners for Conference Player of the Year. But then I got a new coach. I had a guy named Lenny, man, and he was horrible. You know, and that kind of killed me. So, yeah, it was frustrating. I was over in Yakima, and I went to Germany. And I tell you, I was in Yakima, and I just said, I'm going to play as well as I can. I'm going to give them no reason but to call me up. Because I remember trying out for the Sonics in 92 and I got cut. You know, I don't know if you guys can see the Sonic sweatshirt over there with the
Is
number
that what they
4
gave
on it.
you?
I was number 4 in training camp. Yeah, I was number 4 in training camp. But back then, guys, it was a grown-ass men in the NBA. Ricky Pierce, Nate McMillan. I don't know if the Sonic fans remember Benoit Benjamin. And I remember being in training camp and George pulling me to the side. He was like, if you want to make this team, that guy wearing number 40 hasn't touched the ball yet. You need to try to get the ball to him because you're a point guard. So I said, oh, okay. But I ended up getting cut. And I finally got my chance with the Houston Rockets. But the reason that I knew I can play, I would always work out with the Sonic guys, Nate, Gary, Shawn, Detlef, Dale Ellis. I would always work out with those guys, X-Man. I would always work out with them at the pro club. So I knew where my game was. I knew I could play in the NBA because I could shoot the basketball. Gas, I'm going to be honest, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I can shoot the basketball as well as anybody. So I knew I could play. I just knew I had to get an opportunity.
How's that work? Do you have an agent at that time, or are you calling the NBA? I mean, who's making
I had
the
an agent, but I had an agent who's running the whole goddamn, he runs the whole NBA Summer League. My agent at the time was Warren Legary.
Oh, okay. All right.
I heard of Warren.
Yeah,
but I was a nobody, you know, so I
Yeah.
don't think much attention was paid to me. And yeah, I was frustrated, man. I remember the year I won MVP of the CBA. I mean, I was shooting 60% from 3-point range, not 2-point range, but 3-point range.
Wow.
Averaging like 25 points a game and still wasn't getting called up. And I remember my coach, Mo McCone, who was a longtime NBA coach, he said, somebody's dropping the ball, man. He said, it ain't me. I'm talking to all the teams. You're playing great. So I said, is you talking about my agent? He said, yeah. So I ended up switching to another agent. And I can't remember, a guy named Steve Kaufman was representing me when I finally got called up by the Rockets. But a guy named Mark Bartelstein, I think, was my best agent. And a guy I still have a relationship with and respect to this day.
How did you ever consider just giving up, saying I'm going to go get into business or something?
No, I didn't, but my family did, and my wife's family did. You know, if he doesn't make it this year, maybe he should just get a real job. And I'm like, what the hell are they talking about? You know, I can play. I mean, come on, Gas. I was 3 times All Pac-10, man. You know, I mean, I was 3 times. UW wasn't great, but I was 3 times MVP of the team. And like I said, I knew I can play, but I've always been an outspoken person that speaks my mind. And I definitely don't think, you know, that's helped me along the way.
Eldridge Recasner is our guest on Iconic Sonics. When we come back, we'll finally get Eldridge into the NBA, and we'll talk a little bit about that and maybe the potential for a Sonics return as Iconic Sonics rolls on with Eldridge Recasner. All right, here we go. Second part in 3, 2, 1. Eldridge Recasner is our guest. We last left you. You're in Yakima. You've won the MVP. Yakima's won the CBA. Like, what do I have to do? And then finally you get a little taste with Denver at the end of the 95 season, and then into Houston for a big run with the Rockets. You're an emotional guy. How emotional were you when you finally got to step onto an NBA court?
Oh, I couldn't believe it, Gas. I remember being in Yakima and my coach, Mo McCone, telling me, you know, you're going to get called up. And I was like, I'm going to get called up. Because then I got to the point, Gas, where we're going on the road and I'm playing against guys and I'm like, damn, man, you're killing the league. How come you're not getting called up? And I was like, I don't know. You know, so it was really, really frustrating. So when I finally got the call to the Denver Nuggets, it was Bernie Bickerstaff, you know, a guy that coached here in Seattle. And Dale Ellis was on the team. But what made it even more special is my high school teammate, Robert Pack. And I know Sonic fans don't want to hear that damn name. But me and Robert Pack played high school basketball together. He got injured, so I signed with the Denver Nuggets on a 10-day contract. And this is a true story, Gas. I'm nervous as hell. You know, it's my first shot at the NBA, and it's Chris Jackson at the time. I don't know if he was Mahmoud Abdul-Rose by then. Jalen Rose, Robert Pack, Dale Ellis, Dikembe Mutombo, Brian Williams, Reggie Williams, Brian Stith, all those guys were on the team. Bernie's the coach. And Mike Brown back then was just like a gopher guy for the Nuggets. He picked me up from the airport and took me to do a little workout. And the first game I got in, I got fouled and I was at the free throw line. And of all people to heckle me, it was Dale Ellis. Oh, he can't shoot. And I'm like, wait a minute, Dale, I thought you was my boy, you know? And I was nervous as hell, Gas, but Dale was giving me a bad time, man. I think I knocked down the 2 free throws, and that was my first points in the NBA. But I'll never forget it. Me and Dale used to work out together all the time at the Bellevue Pro Club. You know, he was just giving me a bad time, man. But that was my first taste in the NBA. But then I got cut and went back to the CBA, so I was depressed all over again.
You go back, and again, Yakima wins a championship. Then Houston calls, and you end up with 2-time defending champions with just a roster full of Hall of Famers. And that's, I think, when you had to feel like, okay, now I finally really belong, because you played like 70 games for them that year or something. I mean,
and you're talking about a dream come true, Gas. You know, you go from Yakima, Washington, you know, the Palm Springs of Washington, town, where you get $25 a day per diem. You're taking the first available flight in the morning. I'll never forget it, man. I remember being on my deck, you know, getting a call, and you know, my coach saying, "Hey, man, the Rockets want to sign you. They want to bring you in for a workout." And I was like, "The Rockets?" He said, "Yeah," because my coach Mo McComb was probably my biggest advocate. So I flew down to Houston. I did a workout, and it was just me and Rudy. It wasn't none of these. Back in those days, you didn't have, you know, these other guys working you out. Rudy was out there feeding me shots, and all I did was shoot jump shots, 3-pointers. And I was like, well, this is going to be the whole workout. I'm cool. Yeah. So I went through the workout, and I felt like I didn't shoot it as well as I can. And Rudy was like, you shot it great. I said, hey, coach, can I do it again? Because I know I can shoot the ball better. I was a little bit nervous. But if all you're going to do is have me shoot, well, hell, I want to do this again. So he said, all right. So he put me through the whole routine again. I shot the lights out, man. He said, you know, we'll be in touch. And I was like, here we go again with this crap. Because I had tried out for some NBA teams before. I don't know if you remember when Jerry Tarkanian took over the San Antonio Spurs.
Sure.
They drafted a guy named Henry Williams, and I just completely destroyed him in camp. And I just knew. And they also had Lloyd Daniels. I don't know if you remember Lloyd Daniels.
Sweet.
They had those guys, and they were the projected guys to make the team that year. And I outplayed both of them. But I never got invited back to training camp in October. So I said, when Rudy told me we'll be in touch, I was like, here we go with this again. So I flew back home. I didn't worry about it. And I remember being in my yard cutting my grass one day, and my wife said, telephone. So I ran on the deck. I said, who is it? She said, I think it's the Houston Rockets, you know, because this is before like caller ID and all that stuff. Right. So I get on the phone. I said, hello. And he said, Eldridge, this is Rudy. You know, we're going to sign you. And I was like, you're joking. He's like, no, I'm serious. We're going to sign you. So, yeah, when I tell you guys, it was hilarious, man. I've got family in Houston. So when I signed with the Rockets, I flew down to Houston. I'm staying in a hotel. I called one of my cousins, and my cousin's name is Orvin Williams. He looks just like Clyde Drexler, but he's about 6 foot. So I said, Orvin, I said, cuz, I'm in town, man. He said, oh, what are you doing in town? I said, I just signed with the Rockets. He said, no, really? What are you doing in town? I said, no, really? I just signed with the Rockets. So that was pretty cool. But playing with Dream and playing with Clyde, man, that was amazing. It was literally like traveling with the Jackson 5 of the Beatles, guys. I mean, it was unreal. Everywhere we went, there were mobs of people. And it was obviously the most fun year of my NBA career. That year with the Houston Rockets was unreal.
I always felt I did not have the basketball skill to play in the NBA, but I always thought if I did, I'd have loved to have played for Rudy. He looked like a guy who was a good guy to play for.
He was the best. It was like playing for your dad. I can still remember to this day, and sometimes I smile, guys. I was 27 years old when I signed with the Rockets as a rookie. And he used to call me Rook. And I said, Coach, I'm older than half the damn people on the team. He said, I know, but you're a rookie. So he always called me Rook. And I remember whenever I hit a three, he would pump his fist, man, like he was my dad. And that just gave me so much confidence. Rudy was the best, man. He was also the best at giving guys that weren't drafted opportunities. I mean, myself, Chucky Brown was on my CBA team. Right. Another guy named Larry Robertson played with me in Yakima. And we all made it to the Houston Rockets. Larry and Chucky obviously won championships. I didn't. But Rudy wasn't afraid to give you a chance. And I remember him coming to me one day in practice, and he said, man, I see how hard you're working. You know, just keep working hard. I'm going to give you a chance. And once again, I was like, he's just talking. But hell, I was just happy to be in the NBA getting the check, Gas, you know?
Right.
And one day we were in Atlanta, and the phone rang about 2 p.m, and he said, hey, Rook, you're starting tonight. And I was like, tonight? He said, yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, against Mookie Blaylock, can I start tomorrow night? That was my first start. And I think I went on to start about 30 straight games for the Rockets in 95-96 season.
I'm going to ask you a couple of comparison questions because I love Rudy T and I love Lenny Wilkins, everybody in Seattle. I mean, Lenny's a legend. They named a street after him in front of the arena, for crying out loud. And you go from Houston the next year for a couple of years to Atlanta where you played for Lenny. You know, and again, I mean, these are two legendary NBA coaches. Compare them a little bit in terms of their approach to things.
Lenny a lot more laid back because I think because he's just seen everything. Rudy, our offense was designed around Dream, Gas. We didn't even have a damn offense. We just threw the ball into him and spaced out. And if somebody helped, you had a wide open three. So when I was there, I mean, I loved it because all I had to do was stand behind the 3-point line and knock down jump shots. When I got to Atlanta, Lenny being a Hall of Fame player as a point guard, his offense was designed around the guard. So I think my best year was one of the 2 years that I played with the Atlanta Hawks and under Lenny Wilkins. a guy who I just got the utmost respect for, man. But two of the greatest coaches of all times, two really, really nice guys, two guys that I respect. The thing I respect the most about Lenny, if you met him somewhere, you would know that he's somebody of prominence, but he doesn't carry himself with an ego, man. And that's what I respect about him the most. And then Rudy T, man, to this day, I call Rudy T. And Rudy T is just a great guy. Like I said, he was a player's coach. He told me one time, he pulled me to the side. He said, hey, man, I know you're trying to do the right thing for the team, but you need to look for your shot. And I was looking, he's like, yeah, put it up, because Sam Cassell showing the hell is. So I said, all right. So I started looking for my shot a little bit more.
The other comparison, you're two of the legendary big men in the game back, and you actually played a couple of games with Dikembe when you were with Denver for that cup of coffee. But then you get to Houston, you spend a whole year with the Dream, who's as great as anybody in my book. And then you go to Atlanta and spend a couple of years with Dikembe Mutombo. Those two guys, talk about them a little bit in terms of comparing.
Two of the greatest defensive players, I think, of all time. I'll start with Dikembe first, because Dikembe wasn't even in the conversation offensively with Olajuwon, but Dikembe was just a fantastic defensive player, man. And when you play with guys like that, it takes your confidence to another level, because you know if you get beat off the dribble, your guy has to go in there and face those guys. So I would almost dare a guy to go ahead, beat me and go to the hole. If you want to, you're going to go in there and run up against Dikembe, who was phenomenal. But Olajuwon is probably the second greatest player I ever saw during my era in the NBA. Obviously, Michael Jordan was number one, but I think Dream was number two. Nobody had an answer for him, Gas. I mean, he was the hardest working guy on the team. He was the first guy at practice, the last guy to leave. I'll tell you how talented he was. One day after practice, he said, hey, he called me the little warrior, because I was the only guy that wanted to guard Gary. And he liked that. So he's like, oh, the little warrior. He's not afraid of Gary. I said, no, I ain't afraid of Gary. I ain't thinking about Gary. So one day after practice, he said, little warrior, let's play one-on-one. And I'm like, one-on-one? I said, man, I can't guard you in the post. He was like, no, we play from the perimeter. And I said, huh? He said, yeah. So I said, okay. I'm thinking to myself, he ain't got a damn chance. Yes, we checked the ball in, man. The guy had handles. He had a jump shot. He was killing me off the dribble as a point guard. And the only other guy that had ever done me like that was Detlef Schrempf at 6'9", 6'10". But Olajuwon was just amazing. The thing I was most impressed about him, that was most impressive about him to me, guys, the bigger the game, the bigger the opponent, the more up he was for it. Every time we played Patrick Ewing, David Robinson, guys like that, Shaq, man, you could just see his focus and his intensity at another level. I remember we were playing Shaq, and he came to me before the tip-off, because I was starting at the time, and he said, I want you to give it to me quickly. And I was like, what the hell is he talking about? Does he want me to give it to him on a fast break? He said, no, give it to me quickly, because the guy Shaq, he's strong. I cannot bang with him in the post. I want to take him off the dribble. So I said, all right. So Dream would pop out, and I'd give him the rock, and he would beat Shaq off the dribble. But he was just phenomenal, man. The best, I know Kareem and Wilt and Russell. I think Dream is right behind those guys. He's one of the greatest players of all time. He's one of the greatest centers. Just an absolutely phenomenal player, offensively and defensively.
It's great to hear you say that, because I do think, for whatever reason, he's a little underrated, and he shouldn't be. I mean, and again, that was that era where you think about Hakeem, you think about you're having to guard Gary this night, and there were other great guys too, but you think about Hakeem, every night he's looking at the other team going, okay, now I got David Robinson tonight. Now I got Dikembe. I mean, just every night was a challenge.
You ask anybody that played against him, I don't think he's underrated. And George Karl devised a goddamn illegal defense because of Hakeem Olajuwon. They was playing some weird illegal zone every damn time we played them, and they double teamed him. Not on the catch, they double teamed him on the pass. And the Sonics was the only team that the Rockets couldn't beat. I think we lost all 3 games in the regular season, and obviously we got swept in the second round of the playoffs in '96.
Yeah, 97, they finally got their revenge and got him in the second round, but the Sonics got him in 93. And don't worry about anything you want to say about George, because he stopped listening after you brought up Robert Pack. He sent me a note. He was disgusted. He said, I don't want to hear about Robert Pack anymore, so tell Eldridge goodbye for me.
I got to tell you this story, guys. So I'm playing over in Turkey. You mentioned Turkey. I'm playing over in Turkey. I come home. I turn on the TV, and it's the Sonics and the Nuggets, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch the game. Next thing I know, I see my homeboy, Robert Pack from the lower ninth ward of New Orleans, soaring over Shawn Kemp, dunking the ball. And I was like, God damn it, if Robert's in the league, I got to get in the league. I belong in the NBA. So Robert kind of motivated me, and just what a fantastic series he had against the Sonics that year. And it's the worst playoff series loss in Sonics history.
Yeah, no doubt.
I can still see Dikembe laying on the floor with that ball over his head, you know, and the dejection in the Sonics fans' faces.
The thousands of people who are downloading this and listening to it can't see it as there isn't a Sonics fan on earth who doesn't know
I'm
what
sorry
that image
I had
is.
to bring that up, guys. But Robert
You
Fleck
know,
is my own boy.
It never goes away. It's like the Seahawks at the end of the New England game. I remember people saying, "Oh, people are gonna forget about that." I go, "Forget about it."
No,
People
never.
are gonna see that play in their dreams for the rest of their nightmares for the rest of their lives. They're gonna see that.
I agree with you 100%.
You move on from Atlanta, and here you got Rudy, and you've got you've got Lenny, who you played for, and you play for a guy who, you know, again, maybe is underrated a little bit in Sonics history. He was a part of the '79 championship team. He always, to me, looked like a tough guy, like just a big, strong, tough coach. Paul Silas coached you at Charlotte. What was that like?
Well, let's back up a little bit, because Dave Collins was the coach before him,
right?
Great Boston Celtic player. And Dave, I don't know what happened with Dave in management, but Dave just got to the point where he just didn't give a damn no more. And I just remember some of the practices, and I was like, man, this can't be the NBA. What the hell is going on? So Paul took over. You said he looked intimidated. He was. I mean, Paul was a big man at 6'9". He would get in your face and talk smack. We did not get along at all, guys. He hated me, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I hated him. I remember being in New York one time, and I think I'm on like the 17th floor. I get on the elevator, I'm by myself, and the elevator stops on the 15th floor, and Paul comes in, and it's Paul and his wife. And I'm looking we don't get along. We don't talk to each other in practice or nothing. So I'm looking at him on one side of the elevator, he's looking at me, and we're just staring at each other. I say hello to his wife. I say hi to Mrs. Silas, but I don't say nothing to Paul. And when we get off on the lobby level, the elevator door opens. I was like, well, I guess I ain't gonna play tonight. But that's the kind of relationship we had, man. Paul was crazy. I'm gonna be honest with you. You know, he was a different type of coach. He would get in your face, but he was intense just as a player. You know, and I think he tried to get the most out of his players. And at Lenny Wilkins' last gala, the fundraiser for Odessa Brown Children's Clinic, I went up to him and tried to bury the hatchet, and I told him I was sorry about all the stuff and the way I acted when we was in Charlotte. And he was like, "You ain't telling the truth, you're lying." And I was like, "No, man, I'm serious. We're getting too old for this." But yeah, Paul was a crazy coach. That's all I can tell you. Yep.
In Paul and Lenny, we talk about two Blackhead coaches. There are many, many more in the NBA, many with great credentials. The NBA, you know, going back to the 60s when Bill Russell took over as a player coach in Boston. Yep. I mean, I bring this up because you're an intelligent and outspoken guy. And I'm curious to your opinion. You know, the NFL is going through kind of an embarrassing thing right now with you know, the lack of opportunity for black head coaches in a league that's dominated by black players. I'm not really qualified to say, but I think the NBA has done a pretty good job. I'm curious as to what you think over the years with the opportunities they've created for black head coaches and black people in management, and could they do better? What do you think of when you think about that topic?
I think the NBA gets it. You know, I know Adam. I sent you an email last night telling you I was on the board of directors for the NBA Retired Players Association for 6 years. And we met with Adam Silver twice a year. So I know Adam is a good guy. I know he respects the players. And I think the NBA gets it. You know, like you said, it's been dominated by black players since the Bill Russell, Oscar Robertson era. But it shows, you know, in the coaching and in the assistant coaches, in the front office positions. I don't know what the hell the NFL is doing, man. I mean, I'm still pissed about the whole Colin Kaepernick thing, because I can't speak for all African Americans, all black Americans, but I know I never took it as Colin Kaepernick trying to disrespect the flag. I took it as he's trying to bring attention to a serious problem in the United States of America. And the only way he's going to get people his attention is when everybody's looking and focusing, and it just happened to be during the national anthem. So, and to see not one black head coach is insulting. I'm gonna be honest with you, because you're telling me after all these years, we're not smart enough to run a team, to coach a team. And it's the same damn problem in the Pac-12 conference. I'm not gonna give the Pac-12 a pass because I'm an analyst working for them. There's not one black head coach in the Pac-12 conference for men's basketball. When I came in 1985, I believe there was 3. George Raveling was in the league. There was a couple other coaches in the league. Today, there's 0 in the Pac-12. So I think the NBA gets it. The NBA can't survive without the black players, nor can the NFL. But for some reason, the NFL is still willing to just say, hey, the hell with it. I'm hearing all the stories about Eric Bieniemy. He's done a fantastic job. I don't know how many years in a row. What in the hell does he have to do to get a head coaching job? He can't be worse than some of these damn people that got him, you know?
Yeah. No, and as I've always enjoyed that. And Seattle as a city, Bill Russell was a coach here. Lenny was a coach
Lenny,
here.
And Bernie and Nate.
Right. So it's easy to talk about. I think it's easy to talk about. Some people get uncomfortable about it, but the NBA at least can fall back on 40 or 50 years and say, look, we've presented opportunities here. And here's the thing that the NFL is still so far from. In the NBA, black coaches have gotten 2 and 3 and 4 chances, like white coaches. In other words, hey, you're the head coach of this team, then you get fired for whatever reason. Now a year later, hey, somebody else is going to hire. You know what I mean? That's part of it is allowing a guy to learn on a job, and now the next job he takes, he's going to know that much more. And that's something that I think white coaches might take for granted. And in the NBA, they've walked that walk and walked that talk and saying, hey, you get Lenny Wilkins coached for a lot of different franchises. Nate's been with 4 teams. It's how it should be.
Hey, great. They've all had great success. Bernie Bickerstaff. You look at the black coaches that they had here. They're capable guys, guys. That's I don't think anybody should be hired just because they're black or they're Hispanic or they're white.
Right.
You have to have the skills. But if you're going to tell me once again that all these black ex-football players that are coaches aren't capable of being a head coach, it's kind of like, when once upon a time they didn't think black guys could play quarterback. Now every damn team in the NFL has a black quarterback. So it'll change, but it's too slow in happening, and the players are gonna have to take a stance. The NBA players did. They're gonna have to take a stance.
Yeah. The show is Iconic Sonics, and you've got your Sonic bona fides. I mean, you're wearing a hat, you're wearing a 40th anniversary shirt, and then you've got some legends behind you. You got a Shawn Kemp jersey, you got a Gary Payton jersey, and you got the Spencer Haywood jersey. I can't tell who the T-shirt is there. Who's the T-shirt?
That's Slick Watts, baby. Come on, that's Slick. That's Slick. Rocking the headband.
Look at Slick.
Yeah, I got Slick. I've got Spencer. I got the legend himself, Lenny. Yeah, I think I got Fred over here on the little when they did Spencer Haywood's movie. Dwayne Clark gave out those. So yeah, I'm a huge Sonic fan, man. I know all the guys. I just talked to Lenny last night. I knew I was gonna do your podcast to ask him if he heard anything about a team coming back. I reached out to Sam Perkins. I reached out to Spencer Haywood. Hell, I called everybody. Nobody's heard anything, so we're just all waiting. I will say this, guys. I've been to some cracking games, and I've been really impressed. But the only thing I can say to myself is, damn, if they get the Sonics back, man, they're going to blow the damn roof off this place. I mean, what a beautiful arena, and I can't wait. I heard Todd Lywicki's podcast, which is saying he's not going to try to get in front of the NBA, but I'll be damn if I ain't. Every time I get a chance, when I see Adam, I ask him about it. I sent the videos when I went to the Kraken game. Hey, man, you got to see this arena. And I think it's going to happen, guys. It's just a matter of time.
Well, and a lot of people have said this, and you've told me this because you've had a lot of casual conversations with Adam Silver in your role with the Players Association. Again, it's many years past now. Adam likes the city of Seattle, and I mean, anybody in the NBA says, yeah, you talk to everybody. Nobody says, oh, it's good not to have a team there. Everybody wants to get back here. It just got to be, the business has got to be lined up. And I sense that we're close. I sense we're going to hear something. I don't know if it's next week or next month, but I sense we're going to hear something soon about the league looking seriously about coming back here.
I ask him every time I get a chance. Hell, I asked him last night. He just said expansion isn't on the table. But when I listen to your podcast with Chris Daniels and Spencer Hawes, and I just want to say this to Spencer because he'll probably watch it. Spencer, in the shooting contest, I'm going with Sue Berg, man, because you're now a weekend warrior. Sue is still working on her game every day. So I'm putting my money on Sue, Big Spence. But I heard Chris say that the NHL was saying the same thing. Oh, we're not going to expand. We're not going to expand. And then, boom, you get the Sounders. And I'm hoping the same thing happens for the Sonics. I know Adam Silver loves it. I've heard Seattle. I heard it from his own mouth. I don't know what the hang-up was with the old commissioner, David Stern, but I know he hated Seattle. Yeah. And if he was still the commissioner, I wouldn't feel good about our chances. But I know Adam is in a different situation. And I know Adam really loves the city of Seattle and wants to see a team here. So it's just a matter of if and when they're going to expand. It's weird, guys, because a couple of years ago I was talking to Adam about it, and he was talking more about London and Paris, which kind of blew my mind. He was like, yeah, the owners think that's the best opportunity. And now I think the front-running cities are Seattle and Las Vegas. I really do. So whenever they do decide to pull the trigger on expansion, I think Seattle and Vegas will get teams.
I don't know how powerful the Players Union would be, but wouldn't the Players Union push back a little on, hey, man, London and Paris, the travel is going to be, that's a real thing. If you're talking about flying from Paris you're going to be gone on road trips are going to be 2 and 3 weeks long. I think the players would push back on that a little bit.
I think they would too, but you know as well as I do, it's all about what the owners want because they're the ones that's controlling the paychecks.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We'll buy you nice seats for the plane, but we're going there. Hey, finally, you and I talked recently in another venue, and we talked a little bit about college basketball in the Final Four in New Orleans this year. You analyze games now and are around the game quite a bit. I love the West Coast, and we've been underrepresented. The last several years, it just feels like basketball has not been as strong out here. All of a sudden, Arizona's looking pretty good. You'll bring up UCLA. Don't overlook them after the run they made last year, and then certainly Gonzaga. It'd be something if the West Coast could get one or two. Gonzaga could get back there, or maybe get two teams into the Final Four. Kind of start tilting the talent back this way a little bit.
I agree with you 100%, Gas. I mean, Gonzaga's just fantastic, man. I look at their transformation from when I was in college 35 years ago, when all the guys that couldn't play for us would transfer over to Gonzaga. I think the first guy might have been Eric Brady. Then it was another guy, Jeff Brown. And then obviously Dan Dickow, Nigel Williams-Goss, Errol Knight. All those guys, they kind of struggled at UW with playing and went over to Gonzaga. Now you look, Gonzaga is a perennial powerhouse. I got to tip my hat to Mark Few, man. He's done a fantastic job. I love Chet Holmgren. I love Drew Timme. They got a local kid, Nolan Hickman, over there. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see Gonzaga in the Final Four. As a matter of fact, Eric Brady is convinced that Gonzaga is going to make the Final Four. So he's got me going down, showing him around New Orleans for the Final Four. I just bought my ticket yesterday. But it wouldn't surprise me to see Arizona either. Another Gonzaga connection with Tommy Lloyd, their coach. They've got all the pieces, guys. They've got the guards. They've got the wing players. Benedict Mathurin, they got the bigs and Koloko and Tabellas. They're loaded. UCLA got everybody back from the Final Four team last year. They're kind of underachieving a little bit, but I can't count them out because Cody Riley was out for a lot of that time. And then they're getting everybody's best shot. But I really like Mick Cronin as a coach, and it wouldn't surprise me to see those three teams. But here's the beauty of March Madness and the thing that makes it so great. Who in the hell had Oregon State doing what they're doing, making it to the Elite Eight last year?
Right.
Nobody.
Right.
So you never know. I don't know who the Cinderella is going to be this year, but I do expect Arizona and Gonzaga to be right there in the thick of things come Final Four time.
Well, Eldridge, this has been fantastic. And your story, I love stories like this. It might have been better for you if it had just been right into the NBA, but you're an inspiration, I think, to young players to not give up. Don't quit on your dream. Maybe you got to go to it. Maybe you got to go play in the Philippines. Maybe you got to go play in Turkey, but hang in there and maybe something good will happen. And for you, it was 8 years in the league and then working with the Players Association and now being a broadcaster. You stuck with it, man. That's hard to do. It's very hard to be a big stud in college. And now all of a sudden you're playing overseas and you don't know the language or whatever. You're an inspiration, I think, to a lot of people. And congratulations on a great run.
Thank you, Gas. I appreciate that, man. I think the big difference is when you love doing what you're doing, that makes the difference. And I've always loved basketball. I still love basketball. I just got an email from ESPN yesterday asking me if I'm available for some NIT stuff. So I kind of feel like George and Wheezy, on the Jeffersons, man. I'm moving on up in the broadcast world. But I got to say this, Gas. I think Dick's is one of your sponsors, man. I ain't hear you saying nothing about Dick's. I'm ready to go down there and get some free Dick's burgers. I don't do the deluxe anymore, but I'm a cheeseburger guy now.
We'll have Saul Spady send you a bag full of Dick's cheeseburgers in lieu of payment because we, of course, can't afford payment. And George nixed any idea of payment as soon as you heard Robert Pack, so you're screwed there. But we'll send you a bag of Dick's burgers and make it good. Eldridge, thanks for doing this, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. Have a great day, man.